Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. It's Wednesday, new album review day, and we've got a really cool one here that we want to talk about today. And this is one that I think means a lot to myself and my co-captain, Mr. Luis Nasser, here today. But I think that there's a message here, there's a story here, and there's a lot of good music here. So the name of the album is called All We Need Is Norm, a tribute to Uncle Norm. So I guess you can put this under various artists, right? Because that's how we usually classify these.
That's right.
This is a tribute album, but not to a band or an artist, but actually a fan and someone who's been pretty important to a lot of people in the prog community over X number of years. And, you know, Lewis had a lot to do with putting this together. And I think Lewis is going to tell this story way better than I ever could, which is why I knew I had to have Lewis on here to talk about this. So, and speaking of, there is Uncle Norm right there. And
right.
Lewis, why don't you tell us a little bit about who Norm was and how we got to this place here with this particular.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on board to be able to talk about it. It means a lot. So thank you, man.
You got it.
Norm Nied is a guy who for over 20 years was a pivotal presence in a lot of the festivals that many viewers of Sea of Tranquility may have heard me and Pete and others talk about. Near Fest. Yep. There was also the Rites of Spring Festival or Ross Fest. Prog Day in North Carolina. He was always in all of these. He was a patron. He would invest in these, and he was a diehard music fan who never played an instrument or even attempted to do anything himself musically. Although his dad was a musician, a Polish American, his parents, came to the States, and he basically and his brothers and sisters grew up here. He was a guy who I can't really describe exactly the first time I met him, but I can tell you that one of my earliest clear memories of him was actually at Baja Prague around the year 2000, and he was walking around, and whenever he was at these festivals, he would always have these shades. He was always like grossly hungover, and he was standing in line to get himself a bottle of water. I didn't really know this man, but I approached him. There we go. Yeah, Uncle Norm. And here's another picture of him from when he won a guitar at one of these festivals, a raffle, right? Signed by a bunch of different musicians and people. So he was there waiting for his bottled water, and I just made a beeline for him, and I tapped his shoulder. I said, "Dude, you're in Mexico. Water is for external use only." And he grabbed this bottle of water and he put it away, and he bought himself a beer, and we became that was really when the friendship started. And through the years, he was just a guy who was always pushing for people to listen to new stuff. Right? He wanted people to hear this because this music meant everything to him. He would constantly make the equivalent of mixtapes, but in CDs, and mail them to people, his friends. You got to listen to. He would always be buying everything that came out new, and he would just try to get people, interested in things. Even though he knew that I have a pretty extensive collection, he would sometimes buy me shit because he liked it and he wanted me to have it, and he didn't want me to give him any bullshit. He just wanted me to have it. So the only answer was to buy it. So I would just shut the fuck up and get it, right? And but many times also, and this is really key, he was somebody who was willing to fight for bands. There's just a reality that in a lot of these situations, sometimes you not every promoter is the same, right? Not all the treatment is above board. And he was always there to make sure that if you had a contract and you were supposed to get paid a certain amount of money and get a certain number of hotel rooms, that you fucking got them, right? So that was another aspect of our relationship. He became really instrumental in a lot of things that happened to me with Sonus Umbra and with Mike Coot over the years. He really made a lot of shit happen. And it got to the point where I used to joke that he was my manager. And he'd always tell me, no, you don't want me to be your manager because your friend, the guy you know, this is not who I am in the business world. In the business world, I am ruthless, right? You don't want me as your manager. But we joked about it. And we just became very, very good friends. You know, he was somebody I really loved very deeply. So when he finally got very ill with cancer a few years ago, it became very difficult to see him, especially during the pandemic, because of course he is now immunocompromised. Yeah. This is before there were any kind of vaccines. I did get a chance to visit him before the pandemic once at the hospital. That was the only time I saw him before he died. And he, as you can see from all the photos, he wasn't exactly svelte. I mean, let's just say that this Polish bastard ate a lot of kielbasa, right? And what happened was that he was in this bed and his wife Sue was there, and she was, as always, Saint Sue was amazing. And but he had a shaved head, and he had a giant scar with staples, right? And it was really not what I was expecting to see. I don't know what expectation I had, but he was not. He looked very frail, right? And I just remember I didn't know what do you say to a guy in that situation, right? So all I could think of is I just stood by his bedside and just waited for him to come out of the funk. I just gave him the finger, right? Because I thought that's all I got, right? And I told him, well, for the first time in your life, you're more metal than anyone. I know. You win, right? And I just tried to make him laugh, and I tried to make myself laugh so I wouldn't fucking start crying, you know, because it was just really, really, really terrible. And it brought me closer also to his wife, and I left. That was the last time I saw him. You know, he was coming in and out of it, but his room was plastered with postcards from all over the world. People from Europe who knew him, all these Norwegian people, and the guys in Magic Pie, and many, many people from many bands from all over the world, right? They were sending him best wishes and all these things. And it became very clear to me that everybody really had a very special connection. It wasn't just me. There was a lot of people involved in this. So as we made records with Sonus Umbra, it became the last record we made, Sky Full of Ghosts. It really became for me a race against the clock, because he kept telling me, he would call me and he was like very not doing well. And he wanted to know when's the album coming. And I just needed to get the other guys in the band to get their head out of their ass and finish so we could just give this guy the record, right? Yeah, and I was very upset.
Before he left,
yeah, which we managed to do, but it was contentious, but we managed, right? And you know, we would talk on the phone briefly with some regularity. And he would always have things like he would always either get people to give you money when you were out on tour, or he would give you money himself. He would figure out a way to support you. I want to show, if I may, this is something that he made for Mike Cood when we were playing the after party in one of these festivals. And we were getting screwed by the organizers, who will go unnamed, but their names are not Chad and Rob, so obviously. And he made this. Right, that was the kind of guy he was, right? And so when he died, I was shocked by just how badly that made me feel, right? And I thought, well, you know, I can't just stand still like a fucking hummingbird and do nothing, right? So I thought, well, this guy always fought about music. He wanted people to hear all kinds of new music. So the only thing that made sense to me was to put together an album of music that most people had not heard. And I wanted it to be mostly unreleased music by all these bands that knew him and loved him. And then I just put out a message to everybody that I knew saying, hey, do you got anything unreleased? You got anything you want to share? It's for Norm. That's all I had to say. And, you know, good friends of mine, like the guys in Discipline and Echolyn, they were on board. Bands that I'm in, I mean, I put Mike Cood back together for the purpose of doing a song for this thing, right? And we fortunately had one unreleased track from the Sky Full of Ghosts session, so we put that in here as well for Sonus. And Luzeriada had a song that I wrote, and we threw that in there as well, with Matthias Olsen on drums. And we got a lot. In fact, we got more than we could put in one CD, but not enough for two. So that's why it's not a double disc. So it was really moving to get everybody on board. You know, Tina from Magenta. I don't know if you know, she's a lovely, lovely human being. And everybody who contributed to this they were just great. And I'm very, very grateful to everyone who did participate. And there were many other people who wanted to participate, but for reasons, you know, it was in the middle of the pandemic, they just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so in talking with Sue, his widow, and by the way, this would have not been possible without some people that I do want to acknowledge. First of all, my partner in crime, Andy Tillotson, with whom I always work, we mixed it and did everything together. So that guy, he's I call him the man in the desert because he lives in motherfucking Abu Dhabi, right? Nowadays. But yeah, he was essential, and I'm very grateful to him for what he did. But then also there was Donna O'Donnell from Jersey, and Peggy Beal from Philly, and of course Chad Hutchinson from Nearfest and Progseed and all these things, who's been a friend for many years, who all helped me raise money to be able to manufacture the CD. And also Chad did all the artwork. So he put together all the photos, he put together everything, right? He did everything in this package, right? And then once we had this, I talked to Sue, and she said that she wanted all the money to be donated to, because the idea was, this is for you guys, right? It's not, I'm not making any money. There's none of the bands are. That was stated up front. And not that there's any money to be made in Prague, you know, but whatever there is, you know, it's not zero either. And she decided that the money should go to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for cancer. So we have so far made one check, and we're about to cut the second one. The first one was for $1,700, and the next one is a little bit bigger than that. I don't know yet the totals because they're still trying to sell it, but and we're just going to continue to sell it for as long as inventory lasts and donate the money. And then whatever is not, when the physical material runs out, we're going to continue to have it on Bandcamp. And people who just prefer downloads and don't like physical media, not my kind of people, but I respect those formats as well. People can download it. And one of the things that we will do is we are going to put up a lot of the extra songs that couldn't fit on the CD on Bandcamp.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, so people can still get.
So people can get some extra stuff, and everybody who contributed material can be represented, because there were many other bands who wanted to be in it and did send us stuff, but it came in too late. Like some people sent me stuff when it was already in the printers, and already there was no room for it. So I want to be able to add some of the extra tracks, and that's very easy to do on Bandcamp. You just upload them, and there they are. So the idea is that I got in touch with Peter Bowers of St. Jude, and he's coordinating the promotion. And I sent him directly all the checks, and they're in the name of Norm Nied. So to honor the man who did so much for so many of us in so many bands, we're talking everybody from Arena to IQ, Sonus Umbra, Discipline, Echolyn, is everybody, right? We put together a sampler of new music, mostly, or music which may not be new but was very relevant. Like, for example, the Echolyn track is perfect. Never the Same.
Yeah,
is the ideal way to close this record.
I was just gonna say, it's a great close. It's a great song anyway,
Yeah.
And it's like, to have it be last on here, it's
Right.
such like an uplifting, just kind of
Yes.
feel good
Yes.
song, right? Yeah.
So Little Atlas is represented, Unitopia that we haven't mentioned. Origin of Animal is an ensemble from Chicago that most prog people don't know.
Yeah,
It really is chamber rock. And I'm going to be sending you their albums because you need to have them. They're very, very good. And John Batema is a guy from Ephemeral Sun. And what John sent me was like a whole mix of Harvest Aorta live. I said, well, John, I can't put another whole album just to view, right? And he sent me some like just keyboard, just him playing kick-ass analog synths.
It's
right?
like
So,
soundscapey type stuff. Yeah.
yes, but in a Blade Runner-ish kind of vein in a way. And so we tried to put together something that made sense, that it hangs like an album, and that people who don't know any modern prog can actually donate $15 to St. Jude and actually sample some really cool shit that was made in the in the 90s and later, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the biggest strengths of Sea of Tranquility, why I became a fan and why I'm very grateful for all you do, is that you actually shine a light on really cool music that is being made now, right? Whether it's a so-called legacy band or not, people don't even listen to their new shit, which is crazy to me, right? So I think that it's an opportunity for people to actually listen in, donate, and I hope that as many people as possible do, because it was a labor of love, right? I don't want to take credit for it, because it was literally the least thing I could do for my friend, who I miss deeply. And but I think we put together a very good product, and it's a sampler of a lot of fresh talent, including, for example, John Jowitt's most recent band. I know that Andy does shows it in Sea of Tranquility. So, this is a good thing, and I would encourage people to listen. Much like a Near Fest has a little bit of everything, right? So if you like more of the neo, you're going to get some of that. If you like more of the experimental stuff, you're going to get some of that, right? And it's a representation of the range of what Norm was into, and all the things that he was very actively engaged in trying to get people hip. He always used that phrase. I want to get you hip to blah blah, right?
So, yeah, I mean, there certainly is a little bit of everything on here, and I think that's the appeal of something like this, especially for folks who like progressive rock, but maybe aren't all that hip to some of the more recent bands and recent relative term 20, 30 years, right? For those of you who may be watching this and, you love Genesis and Yes and ELP and Tull and Rush and all that kind of stuff, but maybe you don't really know many of the more modern bands that have come about post 1990. I mean, you got the good hard rocking band Tiles, right? Who, if you like Rush, you'll love them. If you like the great female vocal led bands, you got Magenta on here. You've got, Discipline is such an amazing band that more people need to know about. If you've never listened to Echolyn, and I know there's people out there amazingly who haven't, you have a great song from them. Like you mentioned, Rain is on here, Andy Edwards, who you've seen here on the channel, and John Jowett. You got Sonus Umbra, right? And, Mike Cloud and Lustereato, which are bands that you're associated with. I mean, is on here, a great Northeast prog band. I mean, this little atlas, I mean, I think I named most of them there, but it's just a little bit of everything. And I think that's a really good, like you mentioned, sampler of some bands that might have just kind of passed you by if you haven't been paying attention over the last couple of decades.
So that's the idea. This is like a CD sampler from Beyond the Grave that Norm is sending to everybody.
He would approve, right? He would approve?
Yeah, I think he would. I hope he would. Like I said, it's a little difficult for me to talk about too much of it because it's still very fresh, even though it's been a year. But he was a very important guy in my life and in my work as a musician, and in that of many other people as well. So I hope that that folks are willing to give it a shot.
And the book was really
again,
good. And
you've for got a good cause.
Great booklet, and Lewis has a lot to say in here, which is really good. And the pictures are great. And the funny thing is that I never knew Norm, but as someone who went to a lot of Near Fest, I of course recognize the face. I saw him. I probably seen him at Rozfest as well. But he's you go to these festivals and there's like anywhere from 600 to 1,000 people at them, and you can't get to know everybody. But I remember the face, and he was always one of those guys buzzing about all over the place. And you see all of these great pictures from various shows and festivals, and you can see how beloved he was by so many people. And if you look through this, you see other faces like, oh, I remember that person, I know that person, and that's kind of cool. That's this
Yeah.
basically, this whole project here, this whole release is like a just kind of like a big love letter to the guy, but also a celebration of the music and all the friends and bands that he knew and loved. And that's, I think, and that picture on the back kind of sums it up perfectly right there.
That's exactly right. And he's probably standing right outside the ladies' room too, because he didn't like to wait. He was notorious for doing shit like that. He was one of a kind. I loved him. I really sincerely loved him.
Yeah. So where can folks go get this now? Where should
they can get it at Prog Rock Essentials. I'll throw up a link for you so you can put it on the YouTube. And if they want to download the album, that is going to be at Bandcamp. So there's going to be a link for that as well. So it's $15 plus shipping. 100% of the $15 goes directly to St. Jude.
Cool.
So we're not keeping any. We're not even keeping the money to make more. It was like a limited run for people who like physical copies of CDs, and then it's going to live forever as a download on Bandcamp. People can go to the Sonus Umbra Bandcamp, and other bands who were represented, they gave me permission to set it up. So it's all of it is going directly to St. Jude. And like I said, we already sent them one paycheck. Mark 140 of Prog Rock Essentials will mail you your copies, right? And if you choose to buy a physical format, and I hope we do sell out. It's doing okay, considering the realities of today's marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. So for everybody watching, please do consider picking this up, because not only is it a good cause, there's some really good music on here. So take a chance, give it a try. I think you'll like quite, and that's always a good thing, right? You buy something like this, a bunch of bands you're not familiar with, and hey, you fall in love with 3 or 4 of these songs, you go start investigating those catalogs. I mean, that's what this is all about, right? I mean,
there's some really cool bands here, man. So a good chunk of my collection, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
There you have it. All we need is Norm, a tribute to Uncle Norm. Go check it out. The links will be below, so please go investigate it. And thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks for Louis for coming on and helping us out talking about this thing. And we'll see you real soon here on the channel. For Luis Nasser, I'm Pete Pardo. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Awesome.